on. Honore, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm great. Great. I'm having a good time. It's been a heck of a
Yeah.
week. It's been a great
Yes.
week.
Yes.
We've had a chance to kind of hash that out a little bit before we come live.
Yeah.
And
It's a good
yeah,
time. It's a good
it
time.
is. And we have a very special guest this week, guys. We have Kent Sanders,
You
who's
do.
going to be on with us in just a few minutes. Ghostwriter extraordinaire. We'll let Kent's introduction happen a little closer to Kent being in the call.
Yeah.
But I'm
Hi,
Lucas Marino. I
Renee.
help. Oh,
Oh,
hey, Renee. She
who
says,
are
"Hurry
you?
up and
Go
get
on.
in here."
Go on. Yes. Yeah.
I'm
She's been
Lucas.
in the waiting room.
I help nonfiction authors create courses from their books. And Honore,
I help people become nonfiction authors.
that's right.
Yeah. I help them to write, publish, and monetize their books. And it's super fun. I have the best job.
Ever.
I have the best job. I know you have the best job for you. I have the best job for me. I love it. I love talking about books and book ideas and all the things. But how was your week? I mean, did we really do this a week ago? Or was it an actual week ago, or was it like a month ago that was a week ago? Because
I know.
wow.
It does feel
What-
that way.
Yeah.
I launched a book on Friday, fiction book. So it's
Do you
felt
have a
like,
copy?
no, they're all upstairs. Usually the answer would be yes. So I don't fault you
Yeah.
for asking. Usually I have a pile of them right here, but
Great.
now
I was
they're all
thinking you'd hold
upstairs.
it up. I have the previous book, so I'll hold it up for those who aren't up to date. So you have the novella that you
There
can
you go.
read. Although I think with the plant, I think it's better off over here. But we've lost Lucas. But you
Okay,
have it.
maybe I kind of have one. This is the
Oh, you have the proof copy.
this is the proof. So this is Burn the
Yeah.
Girls. This
Yeah.
is the first novel in the series, but yeah,
Look how big it is. Look at all those
yeah,
words you wrote.
I know, 65,000 fun
Is it
words.
65? That's amazing.
Yep, 343 pages of fun.
Nice.
Yes. 361 according to Atticus. It was a really good time. So, and it's been a phenomenal like launch. I've had just the best time talking with people that are picking it up and enjoying it, and other writers that are sharing it, and it's just been great. It's been an overwhelmingly positive response, and I'm very happy. Of course, it's just now entering in the world, and you know how it is when you've got a novel or a book of substantial depth. It takes a
Takes
little
a
while
minute.
for.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting the wave in about a week of like all the people that bought on the launch that are finally getting around to reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been that, and then of course we've had the flu coming through the house.
Right. Good job.
Yeah,
Have you
kids.
remained unflued?
I have remained unflued thus far.
Okay. All right. All right.
So, how about you?
Well, so for those who are not up to date, including Renee, I haven't even talked to Renee. Shadow is the rescue dog that we went and got. That was my mom's dog, and he had his surgery, and we had the stitches taken out and everything. We're moving the post, and then yesterday overnight he was licking his paw a lot. I took him to the vet, and he had cut his paw pad on his right front paw. And so what I thought was going to be a quick trip to the vet to get out a splinter turned into an epic surgery, medicine. And so we live in the country. And so when I take him out, I have to put this booty on him that they made redneck engineered out of a fluid bag. So they cut the bottom of the fluid bag off, and then they poked holes in it, and it's gauze that you got to put the paw in the gauze and then put the paw in the plastic and then tie it up. And so every time he goes out, we have to cover up his paw, and then we have to soak his paw 3 times a day in this solution, which he does not like, as it turns out. And he is a big dog. So this morning I had the bowl and the dog and the paw and the water going everywhere. It was not my usual morning of meditation and reading and exercise and, calm. And, it was like water flying everywhere. And the good news is he is a very docile, very sweet 80-pound dog, because if he wanted to, he could have bitten my face right off.
Yeah.
So Wayne is not in Egypt.
Wayne should be in Florida, according to the pictures I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Those look like Miami emojis, Wayne. Yes.
He was enjoying pizza.
Yeah. So that's basically my week, from a snapshot of something that's happened every single day over the last week, which is fine. And not to be left out of the new book program, I have You Must Monetize Your Book coming out in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my proof copy that those who know me will go, where are the little flags, Honore? Where's the little markup? No, we're not there yet. We're not there. I'm done it.
Well, are you talking about the advanced reader team?
Yep.
Are we good to talk about that?
We are. Yeah. I have spots left on the advanced reader team for anyone who wants to join. And I think the link is everywhere. I think you did me the solid of putting that everywhere. So I'd love
if you guys are curious and you want to join the advanced reader team for Honore's book, you get it before the rest of the world, get a chance to dive in. And the link is in the bottom of the description on this episode. If you don't see it, go ahead and send us a message in the chat and I'll get the link to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop that in the chat now, actually. Let me see if I can do that. It will come out to most places. I'll have to manually enter it into. It's on LinkedIn already. So LinkedIn, if you're watching, it's in the description on my post.
Awesome. Super cool. So we should get to our guest. I don't think I have anything else really crazy.
No. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get Kent in here. Kent Sanders, ghostwriter extraordinaire. Yes. Kent, this is your warning. I'm getting ready to go. Kent is a questionable human. He might be doing something crazy.
Yes, he did just threaten us right before we went live with.
I was right in the middle of my jewel sliding game on my phone.
Oh,
and I wasn't quite finished yet. So it's a game on my phone I play. I'm addicted to it.
Oh,
it's kind of like Tetris, but a little bit more challenging.
Wait, more challenging than Tetris?
It is more challenging. Yeah, a little bit. It's fun.
Awesome. So Kent Sanders is here. Kent is a very good friend of ours. Honore introduced me to Kent through the Empire Builders Mastermind, and Kent is a wonderful human being who
thank you,
is a freaking amazing ghostwriter,
an amazing writer.
Very much. No pressure. I can do this.
Honore, how did you meet this dude?
True.
Kent, how did we get connected?
I can tell you how I got connected with you. I don't remember what happened from there, but I was actually at Jeff Goins' Tribe Conference back in 2018, 17. I don't remember what year it was.
I went to the one in 18 and I spoke at the one in 19, which was the last one.
It would have been 18 then. And he had a book exchange, which I thought was a cool idea. So that was actually, I think, my second year there. The first year, I didn't have enough sense to actually bring copies of any of my books with me, which sounds kind of crazy because it was, more or less a writer's conference. But I didn't know what I was doing back then. Still, some days I wonder if I know what I'm doing, but I know a little bit more than I used to. So anyway, I happened to bring a couple of books with me, put them on the book exchange, and I saw your book, Tall Order. And I was like, hey, I know I've heard of this person before. This book is short. It looks like it's a book that I could use in my life. So I picked it up, and I think I got on your email list at some point. And then at some point we connected more, and you were on my podcast, and things just kind of developed from there.
Yeah. So cool. Life-changing for both of us.
Life-changing. Absolutely. You have changed my life. I know people say that all the time, but in this case, it's truly legitimate.
Wow. In a positive way.
Both of you. In a positive way, yes. Absolutely.
Life
Also
altering
that.
with a smile.
Yes.
Also that. Well, so
People
for
change your
those-
life and it's not good. So
Yeah.
That's right. Well, there is that. That can happen. Not in this case. What I was going to say is, for those who don't know, I have a bespoke book production service that I offer to folks. And Kent is the ghostwriter that I primarily work with for those books. And so we talked about last week, we did the first of what is now two. I don't know if we're going to continue this conversation, Lucas, in future weeks, but we started to talk about your book means business.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be, interpreted a couple of different ways. But I know when I'm talking to people about doing their book, one of the first things they ask me is if I'm the ghostwriter. Am I a ghostwriter, and do I write the books? Hi, Karen. Hi, Jen. And my answer is no. I am the ringmaster. And I work with all of the members of the team, including the ghostwriter. And there are always these standard ghostwriter questions that come after. And so I thought it would be great to have Kent on to talk a little bit about voice and process and working with a ghostwriter and expectations and those sorts of things. But I think it having a proper introduction, and I don't have a bio, Kent, because I feel like I know you and I think I can speak to some of the things that you do, but I'm going to say a few things. I want you to fill in the gaps.
Sure.
So I first knew about the Daily Writer, right? Which is your brilliant brand providing resources, information, inspiration for writers of all kinds. And there's the Daily Writer podcast and that brand. And now you have the Profitable Writer, which is next level, right? Which is turning your writing into profitability, prosperity, money, abundance, whatever you want to call it, all the things. Should we have a drinking game like every live where we say every time someone says all the things and we just we take a shot of something?
I've got two drinks right here.
We've got two. Okay, perfect. Yep, I have a couple also. Very good. I wasn't strategic with my drinking because I just thought of that right now. But I mean,
I do like that game. That would be fun.
We have like an all the things drinking game. And I also very early in our relationship, you were working on The Faith of Elvis with Elvis's stepbrother. And there's my brother. Hi, Justin.
Hey,
brother. Yeah, so cool.
Hey, Justin, nice to meet you.
So working on The Faith of Elvis and then reading that book and also reading, I'm going to say this wrong, I think, The Creative Suitcase. Is it
the Artist Suitcase?
The Artist Suitcase, which you sent me a copy of. And so I've read your writing that's under your name. And then I've read The Faith of Elvis and a couple of other projects that you've worked on. And when someone asks me if I'm a ghostwriter, I always say, no, my voice is much too strong. It's a special skill for a writer, which I think I'm going to get to why I think you're kind of like the master at this, is it's a special type of writer that can absorb someone else's voice. And I know there are tips and tricks for that of how you get into the mind of the people that you're writing for. But then also to have a very strong writing voice. So my voice is so strong when I'm writing, people will say, I can hear you talking. A ghostwriter must make what someone is reading feel like they're having the conversation sometimes with the person they know very well. So being able to mimic someone's voice so well that's why it's called a ghostwriter, because did they write it or did someone else write it? I think what's so amazing about you is that you have a very strong writer voice. I know when Kent Sanders is saying something, but then we have done, 5 books at this point or so, and every single book sounds like the author, not you, which is amazing that you're able to over here write and sound like you, and over here write and sound like Ronnie, Ali, Beth, et cetera, right? Like
Right.
that list
Right.
of people. So it's fascinating to me. And I would love for you to fill in any gaps of what I've missed, because you have a really cool background. Maybe you want to talk about that. Maybe you want to talk about the profitable writer. I don't know. Like, so give us more insight about you and share what I missed. And then I have some actual questions that will, lend us to, enrich our conversation or broaden our conversation about Your Book Means Business.
Sure. So thank you for that really kind introduction. I'm sort of looking around going, wow, you said a lot of nice things about that person. I hope he walks in here at any moment. I'd love to meet him. He sounds like a nice guy.
Yeah.
But kind of then we all sort of know our own stuff, and we all know our own, baggage that we have and things we don't do well and stuff. So that was very, very kind. Thank you. So I was a college professor I was a pastor in my 20s, a music pastor. Most people who are in my sort of writing world, they probably wouldn't guess that because they never see me sing or play instruments or do anything artistic like that. But that was my life for a really, really long time. Music and church and pastoral stuff and whatnot.
Are
Then
you
I was a
going to
college
sing?
professor for a long time. What's that?
Are you going to sing for us?
No, probably not today.
Okay. All right.
Um, I barely sing anymore. I don't have an outlet for my music. It's actually killing me creatively. I really want to be part of a band or something. I really, really miss it. That's a whole
You
nother
just need
ball of
to
wax. But
grow
anyway,
your hair out and
I could be like
Let's
I
do it,
think I
dude.
need a mullet
yeah.
or something. I do want to stay married though. I think my wife would have an issue with that.
I was gonna
Handlebar
say,
mustache and a mullet. That's a quick trip to divorce court for me, probably. So I was a professor for a long time, and the way that I got into ghostwriting, because I know some people listening probably will wonder, like, how did you go from that to then doing what you do now?
Wow.
It was really just kind of being desperate to get out of the academic world and trying to figure out what my next steps were. What I
Yeah.
found really interesting, though, and I didn't realize this when I got into ghostwriting, was that the skills that I had developed as a college professor, but also as a pastor, have been immensely useful as a ghostwriter.
Mm.
Because half of ghostwriting is really listening. In fact, people think of when you're a ghostwriter that is all about writing, but really that whole job is really more about listening than writing. Or maybe I would say they're equal. But listening is a core part of that. And as a pastor, you do a lot of listening. Um,
Yeah.
Me coming from the world of the creative arts, particularly, so like in high school, I was involved in theater a lot. I was in all the plays and musicals and band and choir and all that stuff. And to me, ghostwriting is really, really fun because in essence, you're putting on somebody's costume. So when I ghostwrite for somebody, my job is to listen first and foremost to what's important to them and how do they speak and how do they communicate. And I pay attention to do they communicate in short, punchy sentences, or are they more flowery or more kind of expansive or more leisurely in how they communicate? And I really try to listen for those things. And when I'm writing for somebody, I do my best to kind of channel that vibe or channel that energy.
Mm.
And that's just the way that I think about it. It's kind of like walking out onto stage in that person's clothing, and I'm trying to speak with that person's voice. And it just reminds me a lot of when you're in a play, you're acting as some other character.
Mm.
And to me, that's one of the fun things about writing for other people is you get to kind of pretend you're somebody else for a little while. But the interesting thing to me has been, and I didn't know this when I get into this, is that every time you do a project for somebody, it's very much like acting, I would assume. I'm not really obviously a professional actor, but I've heard actors talk about how whenever they play a role, they take a little piece of that role with them through the rest of their
Mm.
career, and that persona never really leaves you. So by the time
Yeah.
you've had this long and hopefully successful career, you really have this like collection of characters that have become a part of you. And in some cases, like I know you mentioned Elvis, with the Elvis movie that came out a year or two ago, um, I've heard that Austin Butler, who played Elvis, that he had to actually hire professional help to help him shake off that Elvis persona and that accent because he
Oh.
had lived in that for so long.
Oh.
And I can imagine that's really true because as an actor, you're carrying around those characters with you. And every person that I write for, I carry a little piece of that person with me. And they help um I'm not going to say they change my personality, but they
Well, some of them I hope not.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I like to think that with every person that I write for, I'm always learning some things, and they help me to be better as a human and also better as a writer. So that's probably a little bit more of the psychological aspect of that you didn't really ask about, but it's something that I think about a lot when I'm writing for other people.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, as a person who's an expert in an industry, they may be too busy. They may have all these reasons that they think a ghostwriter is the right answer for their project. But from like a ghostwriter's perspective, who's like the ideal client? Like who's the best person to serve? Because I'm imagining a lot of people are listening to this and they're like, well, I write and I can write and I can do this and I can do that and I can do this and I can do that and I can do that and I can do that. What they don't realize is like a book is like a really big obligation, and to
It
write
is.
it in a short period of time is a big deal. So kind of like what's like the ideal person to work with you when you're a ghostwriter doing what you do?
I think it's a person who values collaboration first and foremost, because ghostwriting is a collaborative thing. We think of ghostwriting as something where this person goes off and they write your book and they give it back to you and you put your name on it, and that's the extent of your involvement. I've actually only been involved in one project that was kind of like that. And to be honest with you, I didn't mind it because they sort of let me do my thing and I gave the book back to this person and their co-author. And they actually had very, very little involvement in the book. That didn't bother me a bit. I wouldn't want every project to be like that. By and large, I really like to work with authors who want to be involved in they see us as really a partnership and a team, because that's how I look at it. I'm not better than the author / client. They're not better than me. We're coming together to create something. And I look at my role very similar to, I guess, kind of what a music producer would do. Or, sometimes like you hear of music artists who they have their own music and they write their own stuff, but they also write a lot for other people. For example, Chris Stapleton writes a ton for other artists. Wonderful performer and musician on his own, but when he comes in and he writes for somebody else, they're collaborating on that song, whatever that song is. And Prince did a lot of that too, and a lot of other artists. Taylor Swift does some of that, for example. So I really like to work with people who they want to collaborate and they want to create something really cool. They value my contribution. I value their contribution, and they just want to create something really, really cool for their readers. And that can function different ways according to what their schedule is and how their life is set up and what kind of book we're working on. And there's a whole bunch of factors that affect that. But the joy for me in ghostwriting is really the collaborative element. I just really, really get a lot out of that emotionally.
So they need to be someone that's not just handing. I mean, they don't need to be, but it's ideally there's someone that wants to collaborate with a professional writer to get this book published as best they can. And I like that you said something there about like that collaboration being variable, right? It's like people can determine how much they need to collaborate or want to collaborate from project to project, and you can kind of guide them and help them understand how much is needed and maybe where they need to inject more or less
absolutely
interaction. Is that communication between you? Is that where you're kind of capturing their voice? It fascinates me that you can capture someone's voice. I write a lot, but I don't know that I could do that. So like, how exactly do you capture someone's voice?
Well, it's a process. It's very much a process. So, and it gets better as the book goes along. At the beginning, there's always this period where you may draft a chapter or two, or in the case of a short book, you draft the whole book, and you have something there, and there's always stuff that needs to be fixed or changed or altered or adjusted or whatever. And that's a totally natural part of the process. So it's not as if it's like a Superman thing where you go into the phone booth and this magic things happens and you come out and it's all fixed the way that it's ultimately going to be. It's very much just a process of editing and revisions and refining, and the longer that we get to know each other as the ghostwriter and the author, then the better and smoother that process becomes. Now, that being said, though, one thing that I always try to emphasize to people I'm working with is that my job is to make your life easier. If I could help other ghostwriters remember like just one thing, it would be that the writing is the thing that you do, but ultimately what your business is you're making people's lives better, whatever it, and that's true of any business. So if you can look at what you do in the sense of, I'm here to help somebody be more successful, to save them time, to bring them joy and happiness, to help their dream come true by becoming an author or whatever that is, then I've succeeded. Writing happens to be the way that I do that, and that's my task that I do. But really what I'm doing is I'm just trying to help make people's dreams come true. It sounds cheesy to say it out loud like that, but I think that really is what it is, because for a lot of people, they're not going to have a book unless they have the help writing it. And by the way, that doesn't make you less legitimate of an author, because every writer has help with their book.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's from an editor, proofreader, designer,
It's
if you're
a
working with a
team
publisher,
sport.
it's always a team sport. And that's what baffles me about the world of books as opposed to the world of, let's say, movies and music. Because if you go pick up a Taylor Swift album, it has her name on it, but there's all kinds of other musicians, producers, engineers, A&R people at the record company, whatever, involved in the production of the final product.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when it comes to books, a lot of people have the impression that, well, because it has the author's name on it, they were the sole creator of what you see in that book. And that's almost never the case. It
shouldn't be.
It shouldn't
We've
be the
seen
case.
those books. I'm reading a book right now someone gave me, and the book has such great potential, but I read a chapter that was mistitled. The formatting is terrible. It wasn't edited, and or if it was, it wasn't edited by a professional editor. And it makes me very sad, because I think the book would serve more people with a different title, with a better cover, with a thorough editorial process, with design. And I'm not being snotty about it. I'm just being factual. I'm just looking at something that someone did and admitted to me. I felt called to write this book. I needed to write it and publish it in 30 days. And so I did, and it really shows. And so unfortunately, if anyone has a reading standard at all, if they have a product standard, if they're looking at a book through that lens, they're going to disregard this person's book when it could be so much better. And that was the comment, was like, don't get all snotty publishing on me reading this book. And I said, I absolutely won't. But if and when I cross paths with this person again, and I will, because they don't live far from me, I will ask if they want some constructive feedback on how the book could be better, because I don't read every book that someone gives me. I just don't have the time. So I read books for money, for my job, and then I read books for pleasure that I choose 100% on my own. Right. And so for me to choose to read it means it's a topic I'm interested in. It's something that I want to read, and it could just be so much better. It's actually heartbreaking to see when someone does it themselves. So you're right. Yep. When someone just pretends like this beautifully designed, edited, proofed book was totally written by me, even though I have 10 companies and I have 8 children, right? And 3 wives, but I totally produced this book by myself. We all kind of go, did you? Are you sure? But I think it's an ego thing sometimes, right? People don't like to admit that they get help, whether it's a pastor or a therapist or a housekeeper or a nanny or whatever. It's like, no, it all magically happens. And I have no one assisting me. And it's like, come on now. It's okay. It's okay to be human and have a team of people. I'm curious to know, Ken, and I already know the answer to this, but I would love for you to address it, right? Because I think part of this conversation will be watched by people who will say, well, okay, so I don't have the time to write a book, and I am interested in a ghostwriter, but I'm a woman and you're a man. Can you capture my voice? Is gender important when it comes to writing a book, or can you just level the playing field and take on the voice of someone who is not your gender and still communicate in their voice and in their words?
Well, I think gender is one way that people are different. I think people can be different in a lot of ways, whether they're different because of race or geography or age or generation or whatever it is. My wife and I are very different people. Anytime that we get in the car, there's always the question of, what are we going to listen to? I like 80s music because it was the best decade for music. Let's just be honest.
Obviously.
I don't think there's any debate about that.
No.
However, she loves all of the really, really new stuff. And so, even my own wife, we're really different people. So how do we communicate? Well, we just make it work. And so the same thing is true when you're writing for somebody who's different than you. I've never had an issue writing for a woman or for somebody who's different than me geographically, or who doesn't have maybe the same beliefs on spiritual things, or whatever the case is. I think a good ghostwriter should be able to, most of the time, they should be able to capture that person's voice. Sometimes maybe it's not a good fit, and there are definitely those cases. Like I would probably not, at this point in my career, I couldn't envision myself working on a book that had a lot of like profanity in it, or other kinds of hard R-rated stuff or whatever. Not because I'm a prude, it's just because I'm probably not the best fit for that kind of style. It's not a judgment thing at all. So no, I think the whole gender question in my mind is a little bit, it's greatly overrated in terms of, well, can a woman write for a man or a man write for a woman? I just think it
I've worked
depends
with
on.
female ghostwriters who have written for men, and male
Totally.
ghostwriters who have written for women, and the
Totally.
opposite. And
I mean, I guess my question is, have you ever watched a TV show or been to a play, or you've
right,
been to the
course.
movie theater? I guarantee you that male screenwriters have written dialogue for female actors and vice versa.
Of course.
I just don't see an issue with that at all. Have females written songs that men have sung? Of course they have, and vice versa.
Right. I'm just asking the question because I'm asking the questions of you. We're asking the questions of you that are standard conversations. When I'm sitting and talking with someone, they call me up and they say, I want to write a book. What's that process look like? These are the standard questions that I get.
Yep.
Like, how much is it? How does a ghostwriter, process my voice? How long does it take to do it? So maybe that's a good follow-up question for later. But Lucas, I want to defer to you and any questions that you have.
You brought something up, Kent, that made me think from someone that's not done this before. One of the things I think that would terrify me is all those other things that happen in the writing, the editing, all that stuff. Does a ghostwriter take care of that side of the project? Like if I hired you as a ghostwriter to do a nonfiction book for me, does that come with editing? Like, is that normal? Like, what's the standard there? Like, does the ghostwriter usually take care of the book editing?
So there's a couple of different answers to that. And it depends on the role that I'm playing in the project. Now, I never do the editing on the book. So there always should be, there's not always, but there always should be in a book, a line and copy editor in addition to a proofreader. I know some people skip one or both of those steps, which always makes the book worse. You should always have both of those things. They're going to make the book better, hands down. In my mind, that's a non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable, right?
It's absolutely non-negotiable. I do not do either one of those things. Now, most of the time I do work with the editor in terms of they will make edits to a client book, and I will go back and look at those most of the time and be involved in that process. Sometimes I'm not. It just depends on the arrangement and my involvement in the project. In my experience, at least, it has been, I can play different roles in a project depending on how it's set up. Like, for example, when I work with traditional publishers and there's an agent involved, I typically play a different role than I do if I'm, like, say, if I'm working with Honore on our Bitter Business books, because my role with the traditional publishing situation is you have an agent, you have the readers, you have the publisher, and you have the author. So you have to think about those four constituents, and you have to think about yourself too. And what does everybody want from this project? And you have to meet a lot of different people's expectations. And so you have these moving pieces. Things move slower in traditional publishing. So when it comes to that realm, sometimes I almost function like an agent or partially like an agent because I'm sort of negotiating on behalf of the client for certain things with the publisher, or let's do this, or let's do this. It just all changes depending on the circumstance, but I like it that way. I think it makes it more fun and interesting.
And in a traditional publishing environment, they have their own editing staff that they're probably going to want to manage that book, right? Now, if this person's self-publishing, or if they're using a bespoke service like Honore's, you guys will offer editors so that this person doesn't have to feel obligated to go out and find editors, right? I mean, I guess for me, like the thought is like, it might be overwhelming to someone who's thinking of hiring a ghostwriter to think that they have to put a whole team together. And oftentimes a ghostwriter knows good editors and they can recommend or refer someone that they've worked with in the past that would be good for your project and those types of things, right?
Yeah. And again, it really does depend on the situation, but I do typically work with the editor. to make corrections on the book, not to edit myself, but to go through those edits, to say, yeah, let's do this. And there are times when I will give a little pushback to an editor on things. I think that's totally natural. Not all editing is black and white. There are stylistic things that come into play in the author's voice and things like that. So yeah, it definitely does depend on the situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah. When you are working with an author, and obviously that we get the lawyer answer all the time on this, right? But I have a standard answer that I give for our book projects that we work on. So we have a small book, a medium book, and a large book, and the time required by the author is different for every project, but it is not as significant as if they were writing the book themselves. What do you ask authors to commit to? And let's just use the Better Business book as an example. It's a 15,000 word book. The timeline is 6 months to go from no book to published author. And you have the author for that first 6 weeks. You're working with them through the outline, the first draft, and the final first draft before it goes through the editorial process. And I think just to throw back to the previous question, when I do a book for someone, everything is included. So I work with the editor, I work with the proofreader.
Right.
The author isn't required to do any of that. The author is required, however, to show up to work with you. And what does that time commitment look like for a short book? And what is it like for a bigger book?
So just to give you some context, when I do calls with authors, generally, and this is a completely generalized rule, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. I have found that when you're on a call with somebody for about an hour, it generates about 10,000 words of transcript. And I work from those transcripts then to craft the book. About half of any given, let's say if I have 10,000 words, about half of those are going to be usable in any form because we're chit-chatting a little bit. I go down little side rows and I ask questions that I know are not going to be in the book, but I'm curious. So not everything that's in a transcript from a call is actually going to be used in the book. It's actually like a pretty small segment of that. So for about a 15,000 word book, generally I ask for 3 to 4 hours from the author. And again, I don't use most of that stuff, but you have to kind of get to know each other. And I ask a lot of questions, and it takes a while sometimes to figure out the outline of a book. Maybe it takes an hour or two to think through those things and how do we want to approach this. If an author, like we're obviously honorary, we're just wrapping up, we're getting close to wrapping a project. This particular author came with basically a draft of their book already finished. And so I think we did like maybe one call. I think I did one call with them that was actual content stuff. Otherwise, it was pretty much all in the draft that they gave me, plus some other material that I added and so forth.
This is the one I just got last night.
Yes.
The final. Okay.
Yes.
We're talking about the same person. Okay.
Yeah.
We have all the books,
so,
there's several books
so sometimes if somebody comes with material that they already have, that's less that I have to do in terms of calls with them. So I always try to be really efficient when I get with an author. And I always tell people, you will never get on a call with me when I don't know exactly what I need to accomplish on this call, because their time's valuable and my time's valuable, and I don't just want to waste time. So sometimes, to be honest, though, you have somebody that you just have a great rapport with and you like to chit chat and talk. Sometimes you have people who are more, let's get down to business. And let's, immediately you get on the call and they're like, okay, let's roll. And I try to match their energy and how they like to roll.
Yeah.
Because I want them to have fun with this,
Yeah. So I can just hear someone going, okay, wait a minute. So if I need a 15,000 word book, you need like an hour and a half of my time. Like there are people that are very literal, right? Or if you're doing a 50,000 word book, you need 10 hours of my time.
Right.
But how are you going to get an entire book out of just those conversations? And I think there's an asterisk here. And I've heard you say this to authors during our kickoff calls several times, something to the effect of, if you have other related materials, if you have other interviews, right? You as the ghostwriter are not just doing 2 hours worth of work and spitting out 10,000 words, right?
Oh goch. No,
right?
that's just the beginning of it.
Yeah. So give us a sense of what else you're doing. What other research are you doing? What other reading are you doing? What other listening are you doing in order to round out the content. And we have a wonderful process that we have put together, but I'm curious if you can just give a little bit of insight with the time that we have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. The basic quick answer is I like to use this analogy with what I actually do as the ghostwriter. So every author comes with a box of puzzle pieces, and that is a collection of stories. Maybe it's stuff they've already written. Maybe it's a blog post. Maybe it's podcast interviews they've done. Maybe it's transcripts of speeches. It's whatever they have. Some people have none of those things. All they have is their story that they can share on a series of calls with me. And that's totally great too. Whatever they have, they bring their puzzle box and basically they dump it out on the table. My job as the ghostwriter is to sift through all that stuff and try to figure out what image are we creating out of this? What's the final puzzle piece? And I know this sounds weird to a lot of people, but I find immense pleasure and joy in the process of dumping out that box of pieces on the table, sifting through those and figuring out what picture are we going to make together. And it's not like I go off and I make the picture and I'm like, here's your picture. It's we sit at the table together. I'm the one who's actually manipulating the puzzle pieces for the most part, but I want them there beside me telling me, yeah, this is the picture I have in mind. This is what I don't have in mind. Let's change this. Let's adjust this. And it's just, it brings me a lot of pleasure to sit there and help them create a really cool finished puzzle that they can then display on their wall or share with their friends and family or build their business or whatever it is. So it depends on what they come with. My job is to sift through that stuff and then figure out how are we going to take parts of this and create something really, really special.
That's awesome. So you're not just spending 20 hours to get a 100,000 word book. There's a lot more time and effort and energy and also expertise that goes into crafting what then becomes a final book product.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb. I don't know if this is true of other ghostwriters, but for me, I've tracked my time a lot over the years. And basically to produce, let's say in a full length book, you're going to have chapters that are in a standard nonfiction book, 2,500 to 3,500 words long, give or take in a nonfiction book of, let's say 50 to 60,000 words. That's going to be maybe 250 pages long. I'm just kind of making up numbers, but as a general rule, then each of those chapters, once we outline the book, once we do calls, once I have transcript to work with, each of those chapters is going to take me about 5 hours to have a really good first draft of that. Give or take. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on the book and what the book is about and all that stuff. But then once you have a first draft, then you go through the process of revisions and editing and back and forth.
Then the fun begins.
That's only the first draft is only like the first waypoint of the whole journey.
Yeah.
So it gets really, really granular the more process goes along.
Right.
Where you're getting down to, let's switch out this word for this word. And what about this footnote? And where's this source from? And it's all the things that you can imagine that it would take to craft a book that's then ready for the editor. We haven't even talked about the editing and all the design stuff yet. So there's a lot of steps along the way.
Yeah. Well, I know you really love doing the ghostwriting piece, and I really love doing all the other things. And that's one of the reasons I really love working with you, is because I feel like, I think in any good relationship, if I feel like you're doing the heavy lift and I've got the easy job, and you feel like I've got the heavy lift and you've got the easy job,
I think you do have the heavy lift. Yeah.
Then we both win.
Yep.
And we both win. Will you make my heavy lift lighter?
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Because when I have worked on books that were written by most of the time first, second, third time authors, they just don't know what they don't know. And so there's so many things to change. With your books, you're a very experienced writer. So I am reading what is very close to ready to go through the editorial process. So there is a whole lot of that, the rest of that process. But if we can't even get to the final first draft without a lot of time and energy, then it prolongs the rest of the project.
And an important part of this too, and this is something we haven't really talked about, this is kind of a geeky element of this, but for the better business books in particular, I love the fact that as part of our process, when I submit a first draft to you and to the author, then I format that in a Microsoft Word document that is set up to kind of mimic what the final product is going to look like.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a designer, and we're talking about Microsoft Word, so it's by definition it's not like really pretty to look at, but it's in a smaller format, and that's really important because it gives the author a sense of this is kind of how it's going to read, because it's very different looking at it.
They can print it out and have a document that looks like what the book will look like someday. And we go, you know, it's not dissimilar to the second grade drawing of a horse versus an artist drawing of a horse. Right. And it's hard for people to see how we're going to get from second grade to the Smithsonian.
It is.
Right. And that's a constant reassurance I think that we both give to the authors, is that the first rough draft is ugly, dirty, all the things, right? And that once they're going to love it when it's finished and pretty and done. But we have to go through all of the stages. You have to go through the stage where you lose your teeth and you look geeky in order to get the ugly duckling to the swan. You have to go through that in your book process as well. And I think it's overwhelming. I think if I were starting today, I mean, whenever I talk to someone, I'm like, look, if you can afford to have someone do it for you, please do that. You are going to be so much happier to automatically become an author, to have someone else write the book. Even if you were a writer, you're not a professional writer. If you're not a professional writer, you should let a professional writer do it. And I have had people say to me, well, I'm good at English. I always did pretty good in English.
Really?
I was a student in English. And I'm like, I'm really good. I read, and every single manuscript, this is book 64 of my own with my name on the cover. And I will tell you what, Karen got it and sent it back to me looking like a crime scene. Like the CSI Vegas people were going to show up any minute and be like, there was a crime. Someone died, right? That's just the process. It's going to look like that. You can't have ego around it. But when I see COVID isn't capitalized, but church is, right? That's in the mind of the author, the person who's writing it, that seems correct to them. And so I love the fact that we have this backstop of the Chicago Manual of Style and what good design looks like and what good copywriting is and all of those things, because it's just so hard to do it all yourself. I haven't done any of the book covers for any of my books. Not a one of them. I haven't done the interior design for any of them. I haven't done the editing or the proofreading. And in the early years, no one else did that either. Right. And so I've had to go back and do a cleanup on aisle 3 because it needed to be done. And so I really I just appreciate, to kind of circle back, I really just appreciate everything you bring to the process, because I know I have this complete confidence that my authors are in good hands, and I never have to double check anything that you do. I'm never going, oh, how did he miss this? Or what's going on here? I always have just this complete confidence that the interaction you're going to have with the author is going to be great and respectful, even if it's not retaliated, right? Even if what you're receiving isn't awesome, what you're giving is always going to be awesome, and that the experience the author has is going to be positive, and ultimately they're going to love their book. They're going to be really proud of and be happy that they engaged in the process. And then they're going to go, I can't believe this is all that it costs, instead of how much did it cost or how much is it? Yeah.
I will say, however, that I'm still learning very much. And, sometimes you have a thing that you learn where you go, how did I not know this? Like the other day, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. You had mentioned something about adding page breaks to this client book that I just turned in. And you said, hey, I think it would make it easier if you, instead of just hitting return a bunch of times, just use a page break. That way, whenever you're, working on the book, you don't have all these sort of things that people have to go back and take out all these returns in the document and all this stuff. And for a second I was like, what is she talking about? That's kind of what I was thinking. I've never in my life used those. And
really?
Once I started using those, I thought, first of all, this is kind of like magic. Second of all, how is it that I'm a professional writer and I did not know this? I have no idea how I made it through the world of books and publishing. And I just somehow didn't know this or make use of it. So, sometimes there are things that we miss, and we're all still
There's
learning
no class.
in the
There's
process.
no class, and it's just the little subtle things like being a woman, right? There are some women that will say like, I'll use an old thing, right? You never wear white shoes after Labor Day or whatever, right? It's like, but if no one teaches you that, there's no
Right.
class in it. You just have to
Right.
be taught through observation or by someone taking you aside and going, hey, you need to know this. But it was the paragraph marker. If you press down on the paragraph marker, for those that don't know what we're talking about, if you
brilliant.
press down on the
Now I
paragraph
use that.
marker in Microsoft Word, it reveals all of the formatting in the book. So I have seen where people have indented. I'm doing some letters for my Rotary Club right now, and I imported some letters, and the formatting just made me bonkers. And I realized what the person before me was doing was they were trying to line up the bullets. So instead of just clicking the bullet and creating a bullet, which was automatically spaced, it was space, 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 space.
Oh my
and then they
gosh.
were typing a bullet and then space, 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 space. And then the text wasn't lining up because they had full justify on. So it was pulling the text
Oh
so that
boy.
it was lining up on the right-hand side. And so when I got into the letters and revealed the formatting, I was like, oh, I know exactly how to fix this in 30 seconds so that the formatting looks perfect. And the person who didn't know spent a lot of time going space, 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 type the
They just
bullet.
didn't know.
They didn't know. And it was only because this is my job. I've been an administrative assistant. I was a secretary, silver, right? So I've been around a long time and over the years figured these things out, and I take them for granted. And also I think using a ghostwriter is very much like me using Holly for ConvertKit. I can try to figure something out in ConvertKit, and I spent 2 hours on a Sunday not long ago just trying to figure something out. And I finally just emailed her and I said, I'm sure this will take you 5 minutes. I think it took her 3 minutes. It was 120 minutes for me, 3 minutes for her. When you think about the amount of time that you save when you use a professional, which allows you to do something else. And I remember saying to one of the clients that we worked with, the cost of the book is X. And he was like, oh, and he was like, well, I kind of make that in an hour. And I was like, then it is foolish for you. Because he's like, well, I could spend 3 months writing the book and I could carve out the time and everything. And I just said, what's the opportunity cost of you trying to figure out
Exactly
what goes in your book and where and why and what's the strategy behind it and how are you taking the reader on a journey and how are you turning the book into money with that intention, when you can just pay something, you're going to spend, you're going to pay an amount of money for that, not insignificant, but insignificant compared to the amount of time that you would spend trying not to spend that money, right? And then spending, I don't know, you know who I'm talking about, right? Like maybe 8 hours on the phone with him, 8 hours on a Zoom with him and a visit. And now he has a book that is out in the world and bringing business to him all different ways. And the money that he spent was inconsequential on his American Express card in 2 minutes. And now
it's amazing.
Right. And so I just think about if you're trying to figure it out and you want a fast pass, it's worth it if you can afford it to figure out what path. Is it a course? Is it a concierge bespoke service? Is it, saving up and assembling the team and doing it right, or finding someone to do it for you in whatever way makes sense? It always makes sense to do that. Right. I think right. I don't try to fix my car. I go, or even my phone. I go to my husband. I go, it's not working.
And there's an element to this, isn't there, where, and this conversation has not really centered around prosperity ideas, but there is a sense in which if you want more goodness to flow into your life, then you want to pay other people to do work too. It can't just be a one-way street. And so, I had a plumber come last week. We had an issue. He put a new shutoff valve on a toilet that had been having some issues. I could have done that in probably 45 minutes because I'm not really that great with that stuff, but I know how to do it. He did it literally within 5 minutes, paid him, but that way I don't have to mess with it because I would never have gotten around to it. So
I love that you bring that up, Kent, because I always think when I pay for something, right? Could I fix Shadow's paw? No. Could I have cleaned it out with hydrogen peroxide and like jerry rigged a little thing and hope that he didn't get an infection and die? Sure. Could I have saved the money going to the vet? But I like to think of it instead as I'm serving all of the people, right? I have the need. I pay them. They're paying their employees. Their employees put food on their table, gas in their car, right? Like we're keeping the world going around. It's circulation, right? So you and I talk a lot about circulation. You were keeping the water circulating with your toilet.
Yeah, well, in this case, I was actually shutting it off, but we'll go with the analogy.
Yeah, but I like to think about it instead of as an expense, as an opportunity to help people. You know, whenever you buy something, someone's really happy, right? When I get a client, I'm happy to get a new client because I earn money, and then I get to in turn help other people with the money that I receive, and that is an abundant way of thinking. And so when I'm talking to someone who is interested in having me do a book for them, I always just say, you know, you're going to get a 10x return on your investment of your book year over year for 10 years. You're going to get a 10 by 10 return on your investment. And also that means you're going to have more money. I'm going to have more money. My ghostwriter is going to have more money. My editorial team is going to have more money. My graphic designer is going to have more money. We're all going to make the world a better place by sharing the wealth, literally.
Exactly.
And so that's how I look at it. And then that allows them to do what their area of genius is, because their area of genius is not writing books. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay to not have written your own book. In fact, I think that's a really smart business decision. If you can spend your time elsewhere, why would you want to spend 300 hours struggling over your book? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. When someone can do it for you in a fraction of their time and your time, and everybody wins in that case. I just want to say that I think Lucas needs to stop manipulating the conversation.
With my silence.
With your silence. Lucas, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we thank Kent for his time?
No, I just find this all so fascinating because I'd never really interacted with a ghostwriter until I met Kent. So yeah, I learned a lot from being around. You know, you learn a lot about writing from other writers, and you learn a lot about what it means to produce a book when you go through that process yourself or work with others who are doing that. And I think that the ghostwriting element is something that just a lot of people just don't. It doesn't come front to mind, right? It's like not the first thing they think of when they think about producing their nonfiction book. They're thinking about, how am I going to get this thing out to the world? And 4 times this week, I've been asked, hey, what was it about your process? What do you do? What is it, this and that? And it doesn't matter if I'm writing my own book or if I'm working with another author as a co-author, whatever. I just say outright, don't ever write by yourself. Like you have to have, like you guys said, the editors, the proofreaders, the designers, all those things. You never write alone is kind of like my number one point. Yeah. So you're choosing who you're going to write with when you say that. And if I think that sometimes we just automatically think editor first. Sometimes people don't stop and go, well, wait a minute, maybe it is a better business decision for me to work hand in hand with a ghostwriter, because it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to write the whole thing. They could, but like you said, it might be a really collaborative way for me to write a book in a way that is beneficial to the business. Totally. Also reduces my risk, reduces my stress, reduces my concern, all those things, gets the book done faster, better quality, all the things. You have a professional writer along with you. And I just think that there's I just don't want people to lose sight of that. There's one really strong reason to have a ghostwriter, and it's because you have a professional writer on your project. It's a really big deal.
Right. Well, tonight, the president of the United States will stand up in front of Congress and he will give a State of the Union address.
Yep.
Did Joe Biden write that speech himself? Of course not. He has a whole team of speechwriters who do that. Every president has done that since I don't even know when. Why? Because they have better things to do than sit down for a dozen hours and write their own speeches. They have professional writers take care of that. I think if you want to be a successful business leader, it's something to consider to have a writer come in and take that burden off you so you can focus on things that really are going to move the needle in your business a lot more than struggling over a book for a long time.
Well, I really appreciate that insight, Kent. And Honore and I have been so excited to get you here. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks in the process, and we're really excited that you were able to make it.
Thank you.
Before
Appreciate the
we,
opportunity.
but before we leave, can you tell people where they can find out more about you and your ghostwriting?
Sure. They can go to my website, which is kentsanders.net, or they can go to also theprofitableWriter.com, that's a membership community and podcasts and some other things baked into that I run. And that's designed to help writers build their business and increase their income. So those are basically the two places where you can find me on the internets,
on the webs,
on the webs.
And also, working with someone like a partner like Honore. So if someone's interested in a bespoke book, there's an opportunity to work with Kent by working with Honore. And I can imagine two better people to work on a nonfiction book with. So,
well, thank
excellent.
You. I appreciate it. I appreciate you both as well.
Yeah, and you're always welcome back, man.
Cool.
Yes, thank you,
I
Kent.
appreciate it.
So thank you, Kent, for being here today, and thank you for everything you do for me and for our clients and the books that we get to work on together. It really is just a pleasure and an honor to know you and work with you. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. The feeling is absolutely mutual. Thanks again.
All right, guys. Well, you know what to do. Come see us again next Thursday. Like, subscribe, follow all the things. Go check out Kent's website. Also, don't forget the advanced reader team link for Honore's book is in the show notes, the description. So go check that out as well. She does have a cap on that, just so you guys know. It's not like just unlimited numbers of people. Once she hits the ceiling, the door shuts. So make sure you guys use that link right now. Go get on the advanced reader team, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, everybody. Thanks so much.